Welcome to The Desert Scene with Bonnie G. from the Mutual Broadcasting System, where we explore the vibrant world of arts, culture, and entertainment in the desert. Join us as we uncover the hidden gems and shining stars that make this arid landscape burst with creativity. Brought to you by El Portal Mexican Restaurant in Cathedral City, where authentic cuisine meets affordable prices. Diving into the desert oasis of talent and inspiration, here's Bonnie.
And welcome to the Desert Scene. Very happy to have you here, and really happy to welcome to the show Mark Johnson, or M.E. Johnson, as it says on his book, who has authored this really, really wonderful, very interesting book called Scars and Strife. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hey, Bonnie. How are you? And I'm doing great, and pleasure to be here.
So happy to have you. I want to read just a teeny bit of your bio from the back of the book so people know sort of where you're coming from. Retired Colonel, the United States Army, Iraq War veteran, received a Bronze Star for your service in Baghdad, then served as a Superior Court judge over a Veterans Treatment Court for 8 years on the front lines of the battle to heal post-traumatic stress disorder. Now retired from the bench, you then earned a Master's of Fine Arts and Creative Writing from UC Riverside. What an interesting journey. Tell me what... Did you have the idea for this book kind of percolating in the back of your head for a while before you actually put it on paper?
Yes, the idea of the book, not so much the story, which involves a combat vet who manages to bond with a cougar, and that's his path to redemption. But I spent a lot of years working with vets. I spent a lot of years serving with them, and, I feel I'm alive today because of my fellow veterans, and that's from my service in a combat zone. And then I saw a lot of these vets also coming into my court. I presided over a veterans court, coming in my court really damaged from things that I had seen happen to them, not the same person, but I'd seen similar things happen to other individuals years before. And I guess I wanted to tell these veterans and these people just how much I cared about them. And that was probably my big motivation for writing the novel.
And one of the things... well, let me ask you this. The PTSD, I mean, of course, the military and veterans are kind of in the news now, and not to go political, but PTSD, I mean, do you think there has been much improvement or movement over the last, couple decades maybe, on recognizing what PTSD really is, the seriousness of it, and getting these veterans the help they need?
Yeah, I do believe that. I believe things have improved a great deal. I think this isn't 2005, 2006 anymore, and it definitely is not like 1980 when we had all of our Vietnam vets being ignored. It's kind of fashionable to say that the VA is doing a lousy job. In fact, if you're a congressman or woman, you don't want to say that on the floor of of Congress. But I can tell you locally at our Loma Linda VA, they do a great job. You say I have PTSD, they'll have you talking to a clinician that day. And I tell you the reason I know that, I've struggled with some issues myself with post-traumatic stress disorder. I finally had to realize I did have some problems. I told my doctor at the VA they had to be talking to somebody within an hour.
Wow.
So I think they're doing, there's always
more.
There's always more you can do. We're learning more about it. But, I think this is a different time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really thankful it is a different time for my own good and also for these vets I've had been taken care of for years.
So I want to talk about the book a little bit. One of the things that I felt that struck me from the book, and it's wonderful, and everyone should read it, Scars and Strife, S-T-R-I-F-E, M.E. Johnson, was I thought to myself, some of the flashbacks that this character has, Randy, and the descriptions of battle and what happens and some of these horrible injuries and deaths that occur during battle are very descriptive, very disturbing, as war is. And I thought to myself, I don't know if someone who hadn't actually gone through that could have written them as compellingly as you did in this book. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would say of what I describe in the book, about 20% happened to me, and I had other things I had to deal with, and about 80% were told to me directly by veterans who stood before me in court. I'll just give an example. I had a veteran in front of me who committed suicide during our program, and one of his triggers was exhaust. He would have a flashback to seeing his buddies killed in Iraq back in 2005. And, it is so hard to live with that.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, they have a hard time even functioning. And if you can imagine, every time you smelled exhaust, suddenly you're not there anymore. You're 8,000 miles away getting shot at.
Yeah.
But,
that's tough.
Yeah. Yes, I did experience a lot of things in there, and I borrowed with permission from vets who came before me and let me help them.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the book, because it's fascinating that this character, Randy, he's dealing with PTSD, goes to Mexico. He walks into this bar, and it's a couple interesting things happen to him from this bar. Number one, he meets a really interesting woman, Athena, who becomes a very important character in the story, but also this cougar, Matilda. Yes. It's just and Matilda becomes part of his healing, which I find fascinating. What led you to that storyline?
I was afraid you were going to ask that. Well, I mean, about half of my answers I don't know. But, I will say, years ago, I went through a really fairly bad divorce, and I was not in a good place. I was, stressed out, anxious, and I had this big dog named Buddy who was 95 pounds and all muscle, and I found that I could talk to him easier than I could a therapist. And I'm glad you said because sometimes I feel a little silly saying that, but I think that's a common experience. I was able to communicate with this dog and talk to him. And I guess when I thought of all the vets that I've seen with pain, and then in some ways I tried to make that big cat as a mirror of Randy, my protagonist, that he's able to open up to this animal. Sometimes I was afraid that people would not accept the idea, but everybody I talk to says, "Oh my dog is a whole lot better to talk to than my ex-husband," or stuff like that. So, and thank you for. I just got that book to you, I think, on Tuesday, and you read it. Yeah. Thank you.
It's hard to put down. It's very fascinating. And there's a charity. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but there is a charity that specifically matches veterans who have PTSD with animals, with support animals.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fabulous, and it's done wonders for many of them. So So you got a master's in creative writing. So this was your first attempt. I mean, this is pretty impressive, I think.
Well, I had a lot of help, thankfully. The University of California, Riverside's got a great program, and they've got this rock star, Todd Goldberg, who's a big New York Times author. He's the director of the program, and it's a Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, and Todd is in charge of it. I got help there from friends, and, I'd always wanted to write, but what particularly Todd's program did, it kind of gave me the refinement where I could see what was not good writing and what was good writing, and I tried to go with the good writing as best I could.
I've interviewed Todd, though. He's been on the show. Yeah, because I know. Yeah, I forget his. I think it was his first or second book. Yeah, I had him on the show. He was great. So, what do you have another novel percolating in your head at this point?
But I do, and I have something I've been writing for 20 years. I know that maybe I need to get off the stick a little about some district attorney who gets in trouble himself. I also, for nonfiction, would like to write. I've got all the records for. Well, let me back up. Emmett Till, everybody knows him. He was that 15-year-old who was killed in Mississippi back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't know is that his father, Lewis Till, had been executed by the Army in 1945. I'd like to write on that. There hasn't been a lot written on it, a few books, but I've got all the court-martial records, the transcripts. I just need to kick it in gear. I think it's a story that needs to be told over there, too.
Sounds like it. We're going to take a real quick break. We're here with Mark Johnson, author of Scars and Strife on the Desert Sea, and we'll be right back.
Craving a delicious meal that won't break the bank? Look no further than El Portal Mexican Restaurant in Cathedral City. At El Portal, we pride ourselves on offering family-friendly dining with affordable prices on our authentic Mexican cuisine. Owner Victor Lucurcio and his dedicated staff make you feel like part of the family. Whether you choose to dine in, take out, or opt for delivery, you can always count on fresh, mouth-watering dishes that will transport you to the heart of Mexico. Enjoy discounts throughout the week and explore one of the Valley's best selections of tequila to complement your meal. Join us for live entertainment on Friday evenings and consider El Portal for your next special occasion with our catering services. Visit eatelportal.com for more details and discover why El Portal Mexican Restaurant has become a culinary gem in the desert. El Portal, located 1 block south of Ramon on Day Palm and Via Olivera.
And we're back on the Desert Scene talking to author Mark Johnson, M.E. Johnson, who wrote a book called Scars and Strife. It's a story of Randy, this character who's a veteran suffering from PTSD, goes to Mexico and befriends both a cougar named Matilda and a woman named Athena in a bar. And what happens after that is just it's a fascinating story. Let me ask you this. Would you say that writing this book has been cathartic for you in your journey of continuing? I mean, I don't think PTSD is ever completely 1,000% cured,
No.
is it?
Yes, that's a big yes. I didn't realize, my wife would see me sitting up in bed at night, nightmares, and, if she asked me, do you have a problem? My answer was always no. I didn't want to share it with anybody. And, putting things on paper, that's one of the first things they do in this cognitive processing therapy. You're right about what happened to you. And then you got to read it, which for a lot of these vets is the really tough thing. And I realized I was doing that myself because, as I said, about 20% dealt with is my trauma, and about 80 for, I don't put myself in the same category as Randy, my character, for what I've seen, but about 80 is from individuals who appeared in front of me in court. And it just felt great writing this. Some of this stuff, you carry this stuff around with you, this baggage, and so you don't talk about it. You don't even talk about it with your wife.
Yeah.
And, one of the problems, I don't think what a lot of people understand about post-traumatic stress disorder is vets who have it very often don't know there's anything wrong with them.
Yeah.
They may be doing really odd behavior, avoiding parts of society. They can't get near crowds. Mm-hmm. But if you ask them, do you have post-traumatic stress disorder? Are there any problems? They'll give you a big resounding no.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you have to educate. And, but their lives are falling apart. And, that's where I generally in court as a judge got involved is when they had criminal charges. In just about every case, probably 95% of the cases, alcohol or drugs. They'd go to that for relief.
Yes.
And then they'd find themselves stand in front of me.
What would you say, I'm sure that every case was different, but were a lot of them resolved in the sense that you need to go get help. If you go get help for this, XYZ, then you won't do jail time? Or how did that work in general?
Well, in veterans treatment court, generally, they would plead guilty, be placed on probation, and then we'd have a treatment plan for them that involved cooperation between the VA, district attorney, public defender, probation department of mental health for the county, private attorneys. We had a whole group there, and it's called the collaborative court. If people have heard of drug court, it's kind of based on the same principle. But, PTSD is extremely treatable. I've seen guys who, they can't even, relax if there's 5 people around because they're afraid of getting shot. I've seen them sometimes 2 years later, and they're relaxed. They can roll in with their service dog, and so, a lot of vets just need to ask for help, and a lot of them don't. That is the same types of feelings and behaviors that kept them alive in combat. They don't have any use here in the civilian world, but they don't know that. They hold on to them, and so I guess as I'm talking to you, Bonnie, I realize it's kind of a love story. I don't, I have troubles. I consider myself fairly macho, but it's kind of a love story that I wrote. How much I care about these veterans.
Mm-hmm.
I see these kids that used to be protecting me. They're 19, and then that was back 2003, 2004. Then I would see these same veterans, not the same ones, but they'd grown up. It was 15 years later, and they're really damaged and using drugs. And so I guess the book was really a way for me to tell them how much I cared and educate people. I'm not exactly making a mint on the book. It seems like I give more copies away than I sell.
Yeah. Well, I want to just read this quote from Aaron the Hammer Grant, Staff Sergeant, retired U.S. Marine Corps author, teacher, military historian, about your book, A Story of Hell, Redemption, and Raging Peace, written by a veteran who has experienced all three. And I would totally agree with that description. I would encourage anyone to go get this book, Scars and Strife, Emmy Johnson. So I see Amazon and Barnes & Noble, right? It's available both those places?
Oh, yes.
And there's some contact.
Yeah, somebody can't afford a copy. I'll drop one off for you. Or if you buy it and you don't like it, I'll reimburse your money. But, I poured my heart and soul into that thing, and sometimes it almost killed me.
It's wonderful.
What I was talking about.
Real quick, Emmy Johnson, author at gmail.com is your address. Mark, thank you so much. This book is wonderful. It's really wonderful. I think it's a service to all veterans, and continued luck with your writing and continued luck with your healing, and thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for all you do, Bonnie. I appreciate it.
All right, Mark Johnson, thank you. And we'll see the rest of you the next time on The Desert Scene.
The Desert Scene is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System and is sponsored by El Portal Mexican Restaurant. Eat at elportal.com.